Hi everybody, welcome back to the Gallowgateshots YouTube channel and podcast. And tonight we do have a very special podcast for everybody and a very special video. As you can see, I am joined by Alex Hurst of the Newcastle United Supporters Trust and podcaster on True Faith, and George Caulkin, writer of, well, not of The Athletic, but part of The Athletic. He didn't write the full thing.
No.
But boys, I want to say first of all, thanks for coming on tonight. I think the last 24 hours, 48 hours, I think this is just lined up for this one perfectly, because a lot of questions being thrown around social media at this moment in time. So I think we'll just tackle those head on, and I'm sure Alex will be thankful of that, because as you said, mate, the harder the questions, the better for you.
Definitely. No, yeah. Thanks for having us on, Chris. Really, really grateful for the opportunity, and everyone watching would love to answer any questions you have about the 1892 pledge scheme to get them in.
So what I'm going to do first of all, I'm just want a little bit of background in regards to the 1892 pledge, where it came from, where the idea came from, how, and basically a little bit of background. And then obviously what we'll do, we'll jump into the live questions which are coming in, and we'll just tackle those like I said there. So Alex, this got launched on, it was the 8th of this month, if I remember right. It had been happening behind the scenes quite a while. So do you want to just give everyone a very brief rundown of what was happening behind the scenes leading up to the 8th of this month, pal?
Yeah, certainly. The 1892 pledge scheme, I think, is one of the most, if not the most ambitious fan-led projects in terms of football ownership, we think, the country has ever seen, or definitely in English football anyway. Funnily enough, English football and the Premier League gets all the acclaim and is the glitzy, glamorous version of the game which we all love. But we actually look to Scotland and to Germany and other parts of Europe to see what fans have been doing in those countries in terms of trying to impact their football club in a positive way. And I think to go right back to 2018, my time in the previous incarnation of the trust, which was probably winded down a little bit, we started having conversations with Heart of Midlothian and their foundation about what they were doing, and other fans, and other people from the trust. Nolan Watson had a delegation over from Hamburg about how support ownership works in Germany, and then since then we relaunched the trust, and we're fortunate that the football club and its absolutely ridiculous mannerisms and the way it runs itself helped us attract a sizable membership, and I suppose really since 2019, and had some conversations with some people that I respect and trust who said this is not a bad idea in terms of the pledge. We decided to get things going, and I think I stepped down as the chair of the trust sometime last year to really focus on this full time. But it's been a team effort. We are 9 of us on the trust board, all elected. The guys who were elected in October's election basically got one little 5-minute introduction. How are you? Here's a load of work to do, because we want to launch this in April 2021, and it didn't scare them off. And through a lot of hard work from a lot of people, and a lot of people who normal Newcastle fans who give up their time and their labour for free to help us get this off the ground, which is very humbling that we'll have so many talented people in the community wanting to help this and back this. And we spoke to over 500 Newcastle fans, ordinary fans like yourself, Chris, and other people who've been gone 30 years, other people who live in the United States, to say, would you back this idea? Should we do this? And we got a resounding yes. So that kind of brought us to April the 8th in the launch, and one of the key parts of that was getting George on board as a guardian to look after supporter money and make sure that money's safe and can only be used for 2 purposes, which are the purchase of shares in Newcastle United or to be donated to local charities registered in the northeast of England. So we're very, very lucky in our friends in George. Warren Barton, of course, ex-England Newcastle player. Ian Mearns, the MP for Gateshead, and hugely well respected in Parliament for working across party lines to try and better the lot of football fans. And finally, Humble, who's a chartered accountant and a very successful businessman as well. So they were the final piece of the jigsaw, and it came together. And we're launching April the 8th, which is 3 weeks ago tomorrow. And at the time of talking to you and the viewers or the listeners, it's ticked over £63,000. So we're really pleased with the way it's gone.
The impact which it had in the first 24, 48 hours was phenomenal. George, I want to come to you on this one. How did it come about where you were approached, and what did it mean to you when the likes of Alex and those concerned who came up with the idea that then George will want you to be a part of this?
Oh, I mean, I was staggered, really. I felt very emotional about it, and I felt very, I'm kind of getting shivers up my spine now, sort of thinking about that. I mean, I was never good enough to play football for Newcastle, but I've been asked to represent Newcastle in a different way, represent Newcastle fans in a different way. And it's, I've always viewed that as part of my job. I mean, I'm a journalist. I have to write about the club. I write about Northeast football, but I'm also very, very proud of where I'm from. And, I love the club. It was the club that introduced me to football and so set me on this path. And to be asked, especially in the company of the other people, was just a huge thrill. And, it was a no-brainer. It was a no-brainer for me to get involved. I've written a lot about the club in the last, 14 years, and a lot of it has been negative. This was a chance for me to be part of something positive. And, that also felt very, very important to me, that it was actually a chance to do something and to be part of something. And, I feel like one of the sort of horrible things about the club over that decade and more is that it's been very difficult to sort of buy into the club, because there's been no vision, there's been no big idea, there's been no sense of it sort of being a beacon for the community. And this is a chance for all of us, I think, to buy into something, to get back to what a club is all about. It's a collection of people. It's people brought together for a common cause. And it's about, the club representing us and us representing the club. And so, yeah, for me, it was a very, very simple decision. I also believe in fan ownership. I believe that our football clubs should be enshrined as community assets. I think they are special. I think they're different. And I passionately believe that we should have a stake in our clubs, in how our clubs are run. And, I think we've seen over the past extraordinary week or so, 2 weeks, the power of that, the power that ordinary people can have if they come together and either say no to something or say yes to something. And, we should have a stake. We should have a say in the decisions our clubs make. So I believe in it. And, I am a guardian. I put my money where my mouth is as well. I've wanted to donate and contribute because I believe in it. And yeah, I think it's a fantastic initiative. I'm wholeheartedly behind it. And I was just really blown away to be asked to be part of it.
Yeah, you mentioned there, obviously, the company that you're alongside, Warren Barton being one of those. I think I've seen more and heard more of Warren Barton in the last 2 weeks than what I have in my own family. I'll tell you that. He's everywhere at the moment. But it just shows the likes of Warren Barton to be so connected and still so connected to not just Newcastle United as a football club from the outside, but the fan base as well. It speaks volumes, Alex, of how much that certain players come to this club and they realise the potential of this club and how important the fans are to not just the club itself, but the area and the economy around football itself.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think Warren's great for a lot of reasons. And, when I asked him, he said yes immediately. He didn't have to go and think about it. He didn't have to go over anything or have any concerns. He just said yes. He said, this is a great idea. And one of the reasons Warren's brilliant, well, first of all, he's a fantastic, engaging individual and a great man. But there's lots of those about who follow Newcastle United. And, it's not just that he was an ex-player. He has made a successful career in the media. He is the embodiment of Newcastle United to me. It doesn't matter that he was born in the south of England or that he lives in America. He is us. He is one of us, and he backed this idea. And like you say, it's been great to see him introduced to so many people who might not have heard him before. He went on the Athletic podcast with George, and probably one of the great podcasts. Nothing to do with you, George.
I know. Trust me, I know. I shut up. I know. So sometimes I have to shut up, and I did on that occasion.
A jest, of course, talking jest. It was brilliant, but that, like you say, Chris, and like George correctly said before, football club is much more than its owners or results on the pitch, and Warren is able to articulate that very well, and he understands what this football club means to people in their daily lives and the impact that it has beyond in a non-pandemic era, turning up on a Saturday at St James's Park. And that's why it was so good to have him as part of this. And he, George can agree with this, I'm sure. The work is just beginning. Now we've launched it, myself, Guardians, other board members, army of volunteers that we have willing to help us are continually working on this, trying to make things better. And Warren's a key part of that. And some of the plans that we'll have in the future coming up soon, hopefully, Warren's working very hard, just like everyone else, to make this happen. So we're really, really lucky that he came on board. I'm very humbled by some of the things that he said, just about the football club in general, but also the pledge scheme. So, really, really grateful to him and the other Guardians.
I think what I want to touch on there, Alex, you mentioned it at the podcast, which George did alongside Warren when they were mentioned the 1892 pledge, was just a great listen, George. I think you said that you got a little bit emotional at the time with the way Warren that was talking about his time and his feelings for the football club. It was just, it does hit home, doesn't it, when you hear somebody like Warren just back such a ambitious scheme like this one.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he got emotional. He got very emotional talking about the relationship that he had at the club, and he had to work for it. If you remember, he was a divisive figure at the start, if that's the right word. I mean, in his own, and he kind of laughed, saying, people asked me, was that because you didn't come from the region, you're a Londoner? It was like, no, because I was shit. And he had to work. He had to work at being better, and he had to work at at getting fans on his side. But he did it, and he did it by the end. And he was kind of very moving when he said, those people had my back and I want to have theirs. And I don't know, we all love it when a local kid comes through the system and stars for the first team. Or, we've had brilliant players like Shearer and Beardsley and plenty of others who've done that. That's very special. But I always get very emotional about people who come from outside and do understand the club and do recognise, the kind of brilliant fans that we have, and recognise the potential of the club and what it can be and should be, and what it, and Warren was there at a very, very good time. Some of it, a lot of it, and he saw all that first hand, and he just gets it. He gets it. He got it then, and he gets it now. And that's very special. One thing I would just say to sort of add to what Alex says, it's I'm very lucky to sort of be part of meetings that we have on Zoom and all that kind of stuff together. Warren is in this. He's not just there as a figurehead. He wants to know everything. He's grafting. He's reading everything. He's replying to everything. He's part of this in a very real and meaningful way. He doesn't take shit. I mean, so like we've had conversations, Alex, and he's been very, very quick to pick up on points and say, no, I don't think that's right, or yes, I think that's good. And I think that's just a very special. It's just a very special thing. He's a very special fella. Yeah, he really is.
Yeah. You mentioned Zoom meetings there, George, but I'll come to you, Alex. Zoom meetings are being quite involved and quite heavy in regards to the preparation to the build-up to the 8th of this month, and obviously the launch of this. I know you came under a lot of criticism saying, why were people not consulted with this? But there was an open invitation to fans who wanted to come and have a chat with you in regards to the launch of this. Obviously, nobody knew what was happening behind the scenes, but there were Zoom meetings going on behind the scenes with Newcastle United fans and anybody who was interested in what you had to say. Do you just want to give a little bit of a talk around that, mate, in regards to why you felt these Zoom meetings were so important to get the fans' opinions on this?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's like any idea. One person or a group of people can have an idea, but when you're a members organisation like the Trust and you want to do something ambitious and you want to do something meaningful, anything that I envisioned or others in the board, we needed feedback. We needed told, this is a good idea, this is a bad idea, why don't you do this, why haven't you included that? And we just, the question and answer sessions on these calls lasted ages, which was brilliant. And it's also good to get, levels of skepticism, because, when anyone tries anything new, there's always skepticism, rightly so as well, by the way. We've spent a fair bit of money on this to get it off the ground. We are dealing with large sums of money. I mean, we're less than 3 weeks in, and there's £63,000 there, and you know, that hopefully, and it will at the minute in terms of money pledged, will grow significantly every month. It's right that there's questions. It's right that there's skepticism about this, because this is a huge amount of money, and however it's used one day, in my opinion, it's going to go to a good cause. One or the other, it's going to do a very good thing, and people have the right to ask serious questions about that, and that's why myself, George, tonight, and other Guardians and the Trust board members are really keen to engage with you, Chris, and your viewers, and take some of those questions. But I think the great thing about the Q&As that you're right, we did just put them on Twitter, and I appreciate not everyone has Twitter and not everyone can see it. You know, I'd love to speak to all 15,000 members about it, but that would be logistically very difficult. I think a couple of I'll call them criticisms, because there are a couple of criticisms I've seen, which are fair enough, are that, you know, we should have consulted the membership about doing this. Well, I stood for election in our first election pretty much solely on this platform and used the term, if elected, I will drive the Trust to launch the most ambitious fan-led ownership project in English football history. So I thought that was pretty clear, and I was lucky enough to get elected with 70% of people who voted in that election voting for me. Of course, like any election, you know, there are people who don't think it's a good idea, but we'll have to do something. But yeah, you're right. And to be honest with you, Chris, one of the most enjoyable aspects about doing anything like this, I'm sure it's the same for you with your content you produce, is for me in the Trust, it's just speaking to Newcastle United fans. We spoke to hundreds of Newcastle United fans from all over the world, a variety of ages, a variety of experience. And it was great to connect with people and understand their frustrations, understand why they thought this was important. And like you say, there's criticism, but we also get a lot of nice feedback as well, and a lot of people who've told us this idea in the scheme has made them felt more connected with the club than they have in a number of years, due to the stuff done by the people who run the club. So we're really pleased. We have to find the common ground, and we have to make sure that we are doing the right thing for the members of the Trust. And we're really lucky that we have our 4 guardians who basically take that job out of our hands, because they control the money. It's not me, it's not Greg, it's not Mark, it's not Charlotte, it's not anyone else on the board. It's these 4 guys. You can put your trust in to control this money.
You mentioned the Zoom meetings there and the question answers. I think I was in one of the earlier ones in regards to the Zoom meetings, and personal experience, that question answer could have went on for hours and hours, mate. There were so many questions, and right now we're sitting here, 20 days later, after the launch, and there's still questions, and there probably always will be questions, which I think why this sort of thing is massive in regards to being open about anything really, and any questions people have. And I know it's not just yourself, but it's other people on the Trust and on the board of the Trust which have said, and I've seen it on social media, if you have any questions, I'll personally give you a phone call and talk you through that. I want to go back to launch day, and I'll come to you, George. How big was it to get the likes of the recognition from the likes of Alan Shearer, Steve Howie, Rob Lee? So three big hitters in Newcastle United players from some fantastic years which we've had as a fan base. How much of an impact did that have for you, thinking this is unbelievable that we've got these sort of people stepping up and saying, I back this?
Yeah, it was absolutely massive. Yeah, absolutely massive. I mean, and obviously Alan works for the Athletic as well, so I know him, and I know how much he believes in this, and so that wasn't a surprise to me, because I always expected him to do that. So, but yeah, just absolutely massive. And you know, the other people that you mentioned, I know how much they care about the club. I know how much it means to them. And I know how much their relationship with Newcastle fans, you know, is important to them. I also know that this is a good idea, and it's a sensible idea, and it's about, you know, it's not about taking control, but it's about taking ownership of what is ours, and you know, that's a big part of it for me. And so yeah, it was a massive deal. The people you mentioned, I'm not at all surprised that they got behind it, because they know what the club's all about.
Yeah. Alex, so at the weekend, prior to the Liverpool game, we had a huge endorsement by Jake Humphrey, a presenter and a commentator and a TV pundit who has hit the heart of Newcastle United fans randomly. I think with Jake, is it relatable to Norwich, or is it a case where he just understands Newcastle United fans and how much of it?
He does his homework.
He does, mate. You're right.
He's a good journalist who does his homework, and he bothers to ask people what's going on at their club.
Yeah,
and
you're right.
That's what a good journalist does. But he has, and unfortunately, there's not enough. Sorry, I'm jumping in on it. I didn't mean to, but it absolutely boils my piss because not enough people do it. He covers Newcastle at matches, and when he does, he tries to find out what's going on at the club. And that
I think if you hit the nail on the head there, George, you really have that. He actually listens. Not many people do that, or people state that they do that. Then the week after, they've completely forgotten about the previous conversation that they've had with the likes of the fan base. And personally, I've seen Jake interact with Newcastle United fans on social media. Yeah. Social media is a fantastic platform for that sort of thing, rather than trying to cast the rod and try and get bites from Newcastle fans. But Alex, when this happened, did you thought? Like, did you know this was going to happen, or was that just completely out of the blue?
Oh, it was completely out of the blue. I wasn't watching the coverage at the time. I think I was playing football before the game, and then your phone goes crazy, and it's like, wow, this is like you said, Chris, quite rightly, it was a massive deal, and we're really lucky by people like Jake, who didn't have to do that. He didn't have to do that. He, like George says, he gets in. I think you raised an interesting point there about his experience, because the Norwich City Supporters Trust has been active for years in buying up shares in Norwich City. I'm not an expert on it, but I think they are the 17th biggest shareholder at the club. There's a lot of different shareholders there, but they continue. They have an agreement with their football club that if any of the other shareholders wish to sell shares, that the trust offered those shares before anyone else. Now, sometimes when people sell shares, it's a large amount of money and they can't afford it. But that is another example of some football supporters, and I believe they started doing this in 2001, so before everyone else. But who have kind of got their heads together, realised it's a long-term ambition to do this. And I've never spoken to Jake. I don't know him. He seems like a lovely man. But I'd imagine he is well attuned with the kind of things that are going on at Norwich City as a Norwich City fan, and also now I was at Newcastle United with the 1892 pledge scheme. So we're really, really grateful to him.
Yeah, I'll stay. I will ask you both this question, but I'll stay with you, Alex, for this one. How important was it for you to do your homework on the supporters trust and possible fan ownership of football club? Just how important was that you got this right?
Vitally important. I spent 2 years pretty much constantly doing research, speaking to people. I drove to Edinburgh several times to meet the guys from Hearts. They came to us a couple of times. The whole board of the trust went up to Edinburgh to meet them in early 2020. So it's been a long journey to make sure this was the right thing to do. Although this is ambitious, very ambitious, we think it's realistic. That's the key. We don't think this is a pie in the sky idea that will raise enough money to have a very small part in the club, or hopefully not. But I think as importantly, we'll raise enough money that if the club falls through the leagues, which fantastic this season, we're not going to get relegated. We're all really pleased about that. But under Mike Ashley's ownership, I'd say there's a fair argument to say that it's a realistic possibility. Say in the next 5 seasons that Newcastle United will go into the last day of the season needing a result to secure their Premier League survival. We want to make sure that to protect the club, we look closely at what happened to Sunderland. But someone messaged me on Twitter today and about how realistic is it that Newcastle United are going to fall down the leagues, and that's a reasonable question. But and I had a look at teams that had been in the Premier League that went into administration, and off the top of my head, there was this is all after they'd been in the Premier League: Portsmouth, Leeds, Bradford, Wigan, not Sunderland, but Sunderland went down to League One, Derby, and lots more. I've just reeled off a few there. There was about 11 clubs in total, and if you'd asked any of those fans when the teams were in the Premier League, albeit I'd argue they aren't as big a club as Newcastle United in terms of status and fan base, if you'd asked any of those fans at that time, if you'd asked Wigan fans in 2000, when I was there in 2012, when they were beating us 4-0, when we were about to qualify for the Champions League, and it was another great escape from Wigan, if you asked any of those fans that they would be battling relegation to League Two within a decade, I don't think many of them would have believed in. That's not a criticism of them. That's just the way that football at the top level has gone, that once you fall out of the Premier League and if you don't come back, things can get very, very messy financially. And it tends to be ordinary people who work at these football clubs who pay the price and the fans of those football clubs who pay the price. So I had to make sure we did our homework to make sure that we could put ourselves in a position to protect the football club, or at least play a part in protecting the football club. We can't make any promises here. I can't say if Newcastle were to be relegated twice, the Trust could buy the football club, because we can't predict the future. I don't know enough about what will happen, but we can make sure through the pledge scheme we can give ourselves a fighting chance and a platform to do something about it should the worst happen.
Yeah, sticking with you, George. Looking at it from another point of view, with you being a guardian on here, and not just a guardian of the 1892 pledge, but also a football writer. Obviously, you lean in this. I would imagine that you get asked questions, obviously putting your name to this in regards to previous attempts at this. Obviously, not by Newcastle United, but other football clubs. I would imagine that that's hugely important for you, that you do your research leading into this as well.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I'm full disclosure, I'm a member of the Trust. I mean, I'm not because I believe in supporters trusts, and so I joined the Trust, a long time ago. I've not been part of this decision-making process at all. That's not my role. That's not my job. So, in terms of the stuff that Alex was talking about there, that's not involved me. That's not involved me at all. My role, my official role, along with the other guardians, is really pretty limited. And it's exactly as Alex said. We're there to guard the money, to make sure it's safe, to make sure it's only used for the purposes that's been set out, which Alex has already described. And it's a small role in that sense. I also look at it as part of my role is to be ambassadorial for it, and to explain why I believe in it, and to explain why I think it's important, because I do. So I'm delighted to do that. As I said at the start, I'm a big believer in fan ownership. That doesn't mean I think fans should decide who the manager of the team is, or decide who plays up front, or that kind of stuff. But I just think that we should have a stake in our clubs. I don't think that's unreasonable. In fact, I think it's the opposite. And I think after what we've seen, in the last couple of weeks, as I said, I think that's become more important, not less important. And I think it's certainly sort of stiffened my resolve if it needed stiffening, which it didn't really. But yeah, no, I mean, obviously I had questions to ask of Alex, and just like all the Guardians did, about how it would work and what we would be doing, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I was fully on board.
I think, as such as a respected journalist and writer, obviously focusing on Newcastle United, it was hugely important that yourself, if you're backing this, and me looking from the outside in as a Newcastle United fan, and obviously a fan of your work and what you've done over the years, George, to have somebody like you alongside the other three Guardians, it is massive, absolutely massive for just the average fan like myself. So basically, I just want to thank you for
thank you very much.
Put your name to it. Maybe.
Oh no, that's please don't do that. I mean, I have to say a big thank you to Alex for asking me to get involved. I mean, no, it's the opposite. It's the opposite way. I don't want to get emotional, but I'm it's something I believe in, and I believe in this football club, and I believe in our fans, and I want us to have better than we have had, and I want us to have a stake in our club. And as I say, I'm sick of writing negative stuff. I'm sick of going to the stadium, knowing that even though I'm being paid to be there, that's going to be my least enjoyable part of the weekend. I know that's something that a lot of people feel, and I want, I want to stand for something positive, and this gives me a chance to do that, and I'm really chuffed, and I'm really proud to be part of it. It's one of the other things I was going to say about Warren was that it's quite funny when he's on our calls, because he does take the role of kind of captain. He's the person that's been inside a professional dressing room, and he'll always say, "This is going to be hard work. It's going to be hard work. We're just at the start. So, it's been a great start, but we've got a long way to go." And it's all that. But he's right. He's right, and it is going to be a long term. It's going to be a long term thing. This, if it's going to work. But I would also just say, Alex mentioned Sunderland. I reported on Sunderland when they finally went down after, half a decade or more of just clinging on in the Premier League, and describing that as a miracle. It was the shittiest sort of miracle you could possibly imagine, because it allowed them to lose the following season. And, a lot of my mates who were Sunderland fans were looking forward to being in the Championship by that point, because they thought it was a chance to reboot and recalibrate and start again and win games again, just like Newcastle did in the Championship. And look how it turned out for them. Nobody at the start of that season thought they would end up getting relegated and being in League One and getting sold again, and they did. And, I don't think I'm saying anything controversial when I say that the people who took over that club at that point were chancers. And it would be very nice, it would be very nice for Newcastle not to be in that position. Like Alex said, I'm very pleased things look to have stabilised and, barring absolute disasters, Newcastle aren't going to get relegated again. But history shows under Mike Ashley that it'll end up that way because it has done so far. And, maybe third time won't be the charm, for Newcastle in the Championship. And, it would be nice to be in a position where hopefully it will never be the case, but that Newcastle fans could have a meaningful stake in the club if the worst happens. So, we're there to act as a safety net. I think the pledge, that's one big part of the pledge. But you would also hope that whoever follows Mike Ashley as owner, and it will happen someday, that they would want to have a meaningful, serious, proper relationship with Newcastle fans who, it's a cliche to say, but it's true, are the club's greatest assets. That should be the first overwhelming primary objective for anybody that comes in. And, you hope that having a strong, thriving trust with some money behind it would be a very powerful asset to have.
Yeah, without going too deep into this, because I don't want to focus this on the likes of a takeover, and this isn't a question to any user, just something which I want to say, is that there's a reason why the likes of these people are looking at Newcastle United to buy. There is a reason behind that. The structure is there, the fan base is there, the stadium is there, everything's ready to go basically with Newcastle United. A few little improvements, and we are away, in my opinion. I do want to start opening this up to people who are watching. So if anyone does have a question, then send it in. There's been a few already. I do have some of your own questions for later on if they don't get addressed in the comments. But obviously we'll come back to those if needs be. First up is from Jonathan Lane, who says, I'll address with you, Alex. What would you say to anyone who says a minority share in the club won't give any fan control, and that the 1892 pledge is a pie in the sky? So you mentioned that word earlier, Alex. It's probably something which you've heard quite a few times over the last 2 weeks, the phrase a pie in the sky. What's your response to that? What are you hoping to aim from this? What's the overall goal?
Yeah, so, John is correct that a minority share doesn't give you control of anything. That's not an argument we're trying to make. That if new, ideal scenario for us is new owners come in, new ambitious owners who want the best for the football club, who want to engage with the community and also the fan base. We aren't suggesting that, for argument's sake, I think a lot of people concentrate on 1%, but hopefully it will be more than 1%. But whatever it is, with 1%, 5%, 10%, it's a minority share and it gives you control over nothing. What I would say is that, first of all, if Newcastle United fans manage to raise enough money to purchase a percentage of Newcastle United as a Premier League club, that would be a remarkable achievement in itself and a remarkable effort from all of the thousands of people who made that happen. And I suppose in my experience of fan engagement, that's the technical term the Premier League used, fan engagement process, is been very difficult with the current people who own Newcastle United. Very difficult indeed. And a lot of effort has gone into that from myself and others to try and get that off the ground. And I don't think I'm out of line saying that we haven't particularly got where we'd like to be with that. And you'd hope that new owners, and I've said this before on quite a few shows, but I'll say it again: any new owner who comes in and is willing to spend a third to a half of £1 billion on a struggling Premier League football club, which has Joe Linton in it up front, not scoring goals.
Hey, now's not the time for that, Alex.
Can't say that now. Part of a winning team, Alex. Part of a winning team.
Isn't they're not buying, they don't think, oh, Newcastle United, what a training ground. Or they don't think, wow, the academy is flying. They don't look at the first team or even the stadium, I'd argue, today in the Premier League, Newcastle got the 7th biggest stadium. It's not like it was it? The only thing that has any value, apart from the television contracts, which can be taken away at any time if the team gets relegated, is the support in the fan base. And I'd rather that fan base turned up and said to a new owner, like we would say to a new owner, please work with us in a constructive manner to enable us to constructively give you fan feedback about crucial areas of the football club in relation to fan affairs. I'd rather we turned up and said, by the way, we've got £3.5 million, or by the way, we've got X million pounds. Can you give this part of this institution, which is so important to us and our region and beyond the region, can you give a very small part of it to us so it belongs to us and no one can take it away from us? That would be as important to me as any aspect of control or not controlling things. Not what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to make demands of new owners or saying if new owners don't work with us, then what? That's not what this is about. It's about trying to retain something which I believe belongs to us. That's the strap line of the Pred scheme is this club is our club, which was taken from the song which is sung on the terraces in St James's away games. This club is our club. We think that it's better to turn up and be able to do that and ask new owners about this or for this with the money than not. Because I've been in the position of not, and it hasn't worked. And although you could say that's the owners and all of that, and I totally agree, let's see what we can do. And it's difficult because anything is possible. I don't want to sit here and say that once we do this, for argument's sake, we're able to buy 1%, that's it, pledge scheme, go home. Who knows? Could we do this for a long time? Could we continue to buy small parts of the club? Could any potential owner who buys Newcastle United, probably more so outside of the Premier League, be after an exit plan quite easily? Could the trust be that exit plan? George just mentioned the owners at Sunderland before, pretty much walked through the door with their exit plan in mind. Walked through the door, started thinking about how they could get out the door making as much money as possible. Could the trust play a role in that? Anything is possible. We just have to put ourselves in that position to make sure those possibilities can be a reality.
Yeah, George, you mentioned earlier on that obviously it's not for fans to sit around the table and say, we want this manager, we want that manager. That is a club decision. I think what's getting missing in the conversations which are being had, I think a lot of people are thinking, oh, he's a rate £63,000, you're going to buy the club with that. That's not the point right now. It's basically to have a voice, have some involvement with the club, basically.
Yeah, I mean, there's been this huge sense of powerlessness, I think, for all of us in whether it's Premier League football, whether it's us specifically. And, I think for me, it's been sort of rammed home over the last year or so, the last dreadful, quiet, silent, empty year where there's been no fans inside the stadium, just how important people are to football, just how shallow and how empty and how sort of awful it is without people. And I'm lucky to have been inside St James's Park during the pandemic. And, I am lucky, I acknowledge that. But at the same time, it's heartbreaking because I sit there, look at these people, kicking a ball around, usually quite ineffectually in the mid-distance. And it doesn't mean anything to us. It doesn't mean things to me in the same way as it does when the stadium is full and bouncing and full of life and full of people, because we're social people and football is a social game. It's supposed to be an expression of who we are and where we're from, and without people there's a sense of emptiness. And so that I'm not directly answering that question with that answer, except to say that to make us fundamental again, to make fans absolutely at the heart of the game. What do? I mean, how do? Do we just do we say, well, we've got no power, let's not go anymore? All those things are valid. I understand. I know loads of people who walked away from the club, and I've got huge sort of sympathy and empathy for those people. But I think we also saw last week that there is power in people coming together and saying, no, enough is enough. The trust showed enormous power last summer to engage members, to get letters written to politicians, MPs, to get in front of the Premier League, something that no journalist did. I tried to do it, I didn't get anywhere. And got answers from the Premier League. People coming together are powerful. That's just a fact. That's why St James's Park, on a horrible, when the team's playing well, on a horrible night, people don't want to come there. They don't want to come there because of us. because we're loud and we're aggressive and we're passionate and we believe in where we're from and we believe in our team. There's huge power in that. And so this is an expression of that power. Let's give it a go. Let's give it a go. It's not about, I don't like that phrase, pie in the sky. But, we are living in an era of billionaires. It's true to say that, billionaire owners. And so it feels difficult. It feels difficult to have any sort of semblance of power. But let's give it a go. Let's have a stake. Let's try and have a stake in our club, because it's not theirs, it's ours. And, let's see where we can go with it.
Yeah. There's another question in, obviously, on the back of what you just mentioned there, George, what happened over the last 7 days with these Elite Six doing a runner, or trying to do a runner. This one comes in from Sean Wade. I'll come back to you, Alex, saying, hi, gents. The parliamentary 50+1 rule petition is close to 80,000 signatures now. How would the pledge work if the laws are changed around the governance of football? Would this work in the favour of the pledge whatsoever? I'm not sure. Obviously, I'm assuming that you've done the research on this one, because this has a lot to do with German football ownership and obviously taking it from there. But what's your thoughts on that one, mate?
Okay. Thanks for the question, Sean. The 50+1, there are probably some misconceptions, and I understand about how that actually works in Germany, that fans in Germany don't club together to buy half of their clubs. It's not how they work. There are some clubs in Germany that work as a pure members organization, like the Trust. Schalke and Hamburg, I think, are the two big ones, two famous ones, and a lot of clubs at the lower level. Without trying to get too technical for this show, because I'm far from an expert, 50+1 is a voting rights issue in a club. So it's not like the club is half controlled and half run by the fans. It's that the fans can vote on how the football club is run and who runs the football club, but they don't put money into it to keep it going. They don't have, some football clubs charge a membership fee to be able to vote, and that money goes back into the club. But the 50+1 petition, which I've signed myself, I think it was a guy from the Manchester United Supporters Trust, which is heartening, by the way, because there are lots of Manchester United fans who could have sat back, just like Liverpool fans and Tottenham fans and Chelsea fans and Arsenal fans, and said, this will be great, this will be fantastic. But no, like George correctly says, they said, we're not having this. Enough is enough. And I think the pushback from those supporters was kind of telling. I think if the rest of us had been outraged and the fans of those clubs had welcomed this, then we're maybe looking at Liverpool playing in the European Super League next season rather than having no European competition because they couldn't beat lowly old Newcastle at home on Saturday. But to Sean's question is, how would the pledge work if laws were changing the governance of football? I can't quite answer that, because unless I know what those laws are, I'm not sure. If there was a 50+1 rule coming, the pledge wouldn't come into that, because 50+1 is not a shareholder issue. It's a voting rights issue in a company where supporters or support organizations will always have the final say on any changes to that company and who runs that company, rather than inputting capital or outright owning the football club. Private individuals can still invest in the German football clubs. They just won't have voting rights in them. And you might say, well, why would private companies do that? Well, they do in Germany. But it's a good question. It's interesting because 50+1 is in the news. You had Keir Starmer, the leader of the opposition, speaking to Greg Tomlinson of the Supporters Trust. Actually, Greg, I think, was the only one in the meeting to raise 50+1 to Keir Starmer. And I don't know if anyone's watched that back, but he made copious notes while Greg was speaking to him. So hopefully he's gone and spoken to someone about that. And then you have the government's fan-led review into football being led by Tracy Crouch. I have a feeling 50+1 will be at the top of the agenda of almost every single fan that just speaks to a fan organisation. And in terms of what can change with 50+1, someone said today, well, Bayern Munich have won the last 9 German leagues, so 50+1 doesn't fix everything. Of course, it doesn't fix everything. But can you tell me how many German football clubs have gone bust in the past 10 years at the top level? Because it's zero. Because the football clubs are protected, because they're run in the interests of their fans. And when football clubs are run in the interests of their fans, often good decisions are made to protect the football club rather than to chase quick wins, quick money, or boost the egos of owners. So I think it's crucial. The pledge would probably take on a different role, but I think that's, we can speculate as much as we want about what might happen with governance change. We'll probably have to see governance change before getting too excited.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I've also signed that petition, by the way. But one of the things I should have added when I talked about what's happened over the last kind of year, if you were hoping for sort of some kind of recalibration on behalf of Premier League football clubs towards their fans, what you saw it was the biggest fuck off ever from the 6 biggest clubs at the top, riding roughshod over their own supporters, not to mention everybody else. And so I do think that means that relying on other people is very dangerous. And I mean, it's been brilliant to see the response that there's been across the country, particularly from fans. And, really, really good and positive. And it does feel like that there's a moment. But I do think that if football fans rely on other people, whether it's owners, whether it's politicians, whether it's whoever, we're always last in the queue. And I hope that this is the start of something really meaningful in terms of the way we treat our fans, the way we treat football clubs, and the way their status in society or the community, if that's how you want to put it. I really do. But if the last year shows us anything, it's that it's going to be left to ordinary people to try and sort it out. And again, I think that applies to the trust too.
Yeah, you've probably summed that up, George. I think I said in the last podcast we done some sort of podcast on the back of the thing that happened last week, and I'm not going to go into detail with that because it's absolutely ridiculous. But we said, why is it always up to fans? Why do fans always have to do this, and why is it afterwards the likes of the club associates come out and say, well, we didn't agree with that. It shouldn't always be up to fans, but it is always going to be the case. Yeah. And like you've said, fans have a huge say, absolutely massive, more important than what we probably realise in any aspect of football as a sport, never mind just what happened last week. Yeah. I'll go on to the next question, and this one is from Graham Nicol. I'll come back to you, Alex. He says, suppose the takeover happens in, say, July. Do you really think that we will raise 3.5 million before then, or even potentially new owners will sell for 1%? I just want to lead you into this, Alex, and say that any potential new owner, they don't necessarily have to sell that 1% to Newcastle United Supporters Trust. They could happily say, right, okay, ladies and gentlemen, jump on board and be a part of this as well. You don't have to necessarily buy a share in the football club. They might invite you in, but to have that sort of backing behind you, where you can say the trust has got this amount of thousands of members, we've raised this amount of money in the last X amount of weeks, months, however long it'll be by the time potential owners come in. We have I want to say, like on the back of fans once again, the structure of the fan base from ourselves and the trust, what the trust have done in the last 12 months is phenomenal. So to get in a position where potential owners might look at the trust and say, no, we want you to be a part of this without even buying a share, that's huge. And personally, I think that is what will happen. Yeah,
well, I hope so. To answer Graham's question, no, we won't raise £3.5 million before July. That's not going to happen. I might be wrong, but that's not going to happen.
Are you sure?
But this is the thing. What happens if there isn't a takeover in July? We were going to launch this last April, in April 2020, and we didn't because we assumed the club was going to be sold. So what we are planning for is the club not to be sold, not because we have any inside information or opinion on that, but because we think this is a good idea. And let's say worst case scenario, the club is sold in the summer, we don't have enough money to buy 1%, and the new owner, whoever that may be, or whether it's the people who try to buy the club, recently say, thanks, but no thanks. We've got our reasons. Then Graham, the worst thing we'll have done is probably raised about more than £100,000 per charity at that point if we continue collecting money at the rate that we are in terms of monthly direct debit. So we view it as a no-lose scenario, and the people who've been good enough to pledge so far, obviously, we think share that vision. But there are lots of if, buts, and maybes about this. But I don't think anyone ever achieved anything by fearing positive things like the same with the football club. We don't fear that. We'd embrace that. We'd really hope that the new owners, and we were lucky enough to work with Amanda Staveley a little bit last summer in trying to get in front of the Premier League like she requested in terms of what had happened with their takeover. So it's not like we haven't worked with them before, but we're just going to keep doing. We can only affect what we do as a supporters trust. That's what we're going to concentrate on. In terms of changes of ownership, it could be July 2021, it could be July 2031, which is a grim thought, but one we'll have to accept as Newcastle United supporters. We have an owner who wants to sell the club for a huge profit on the money he paid for it and the money he's put into it since in interest-free loans. That has stopped potential new owners because of the extreme price. So we're just going to assume we've got another 14 years of this, and if that changes in the meantime, fantastic. But let's be ready for the worst case scenario, and that's really what the pledge is all about.
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate that point, and it's an important one. We were a signature away this time last year from Newcastle changing ownership, and I was as guilty as anyone of thinking that was about to happen, and it hasn't happened, and here we still are. And really, we're no closer to knowing if and when the club is going to be sold. We all hope it will be. I think the difference is that Mike Ashley is determined to get out. But the first time Mike Ashley tried to sell the club was, when was it, Alex? I can't remember. 2008, 2009.
I think it was 6 months after you bought the club, was it not?
Yeah, I mean, so imagine if we'd started this then. Imagine how much there might be in the kitty now if we'd started it then. And you can't live your life like that, but I think we do. I think what Alex says is very important. I do think we have to kind of prepare for the worst. I would hope. I also, I'm sure a lot of people know, I spoke to Amanda Staveley a lot before, around her first bid for the club, and I did so again, with the second bid for the club, and she's always said to me that sort of re-establishing links with fans, rebuilding that trust, rebuilding that relationship is kind of front and center of what she wants to do. She regards it. She talked about it being the last great sort of untapped kind of British Premier League club and all that. And it was all front and center of what she wanted to do. But she isn't there yet, and perhaps never will be. And who knows? Maybe Mike Ashley will end up selling to somebody else who doesn't have those same ambitions and those same aspirations. And so perhaps this scheme would then carry on. And maybe we'd be talking about the next owners down the line. Maybe we wouldn't, maybe we wouldn't. Maybe we'd be, maybe we'll be giving a fantastic sort of donations to charity. I just think that, if we don't act, then we do run a risk. And we all thought we were very, very close this time last year, and we're still waiting, aren't we? So.
Yeah, I think on the back of that, it's a great time to ask this question. It may have been covered in Blue Moon Boy, is it? Yeah, so Blue Moon Boy 1956 says, how long will the scheme run? Like at one point, would you decide to donate the money if you hadn't bought a share? Thanks again. Sorry if I'm covering old ground. One for you, Alex. I'm assuming it's something which has been asked at numerous occasions in regards to how long until you call it a day on this one.
Yes, well, we'll have some pretty simple rules around the scheme, which we've got a leading trust solicitor to write for us. Essentially, if the fund doesn't grow by 10%, then George and his colleagues will have a chance to vote on that and say, well, this clearly isn't working. Let's finish it and give it to charity. That decision would have to be ratified by the trust members. So if you're a trust member, we'd have to get 50.1% of the trust members who voted to agree with that decision to cancel it. Of course, the only other thing that would change that in terms of George and his colleagues having to make that decision is a new owner coming in, whether it be quickly, and like George correctly alluded to before, whether a new owner didn't want to engage, or ideally I'd love an owner to come in as soon as possible. It's my own personal preference as a Newcastle fan that the club is sold as soon as possible. A new owner would come in and say, we'll absolutely give you the small percentage of the club and allow you to keep buying shares like Norwich City's owners have done. I've just mentioned, a scheme like that, and we could continue the pledge scheme. Just so I get me bi-weekly chats with George and Warren on Zoom in my own little room here with the stars. But it's the key is that members will always have a say. And if we did get owners come in and we did have some money to give them, again, the trust membership would have to be comfortable, or a majority of the trust members would have to be comfortable with the deal in terms of both buying a percentage of the club, but also potentially what the money is going to be used for, what the percentage will buy us in terms of influence at the club for supporters through the trust. Everything goes back to the members, but from what I've just said, that's going to at least run for 2 years, because we have to get past year one, and then there has to be the growth of it in a year. But if the easy answer is, if the pledge keeps growing, if people keep paying into it, if those monthly direct debits are set up and aren't cancelled, and we attract new people, it will continue for us as long as those people want it to continue, because as long as those people are paying into the pledge scheme, it will remain alive.
Yeah, I want to come straight to you and George, because there's a question, not necessarily directed straight to you, but obviously it involves you. It's from Lee Forster, who says, will George, Warren, Ian and Lee be attending trust board meetings to be briefed on the progress of the pledge, or will that be covered in separate pledge-specific meetings?
Yeah, I mean, I'll presume that. I mean, we've been kept absolutely informed through Alex. To start with, in terms of attending trust board meetings, I wouldn't have thought so. But Alex, you would know more about the sort of makeup of the board and that kind of detail than me.
Yeah, well, we'll have, we chat a lot. Try and keep you guys up to date and lean on you for advice and support, which has been tremendous. We will produce, maybe a quarterly. I think I mentioned to you guys a quarterly formal meeting with minutes. It won't be a trust board meeting, but it might have a couple of trust board members there, just for the sake of transparency, so everyone knows what we're telling you guys. Maybe some official financial updates. I mean, we are as transparent as possible. If you go to 1892pledge.co.uk right now, you can see the figure that's been raised. But we'll put something in writing and send that to members, just to show that we are trying to be as transparent as possible. But a lot of the work that's done doesn't necessarily, we chat on WhatsApp, by email. There's a lot of work going on this constantly, and I'm pleased you feel up to date, George, because yes, progress.
Yeah, and the other thing, Lee should know, and other people should know. I mean, as guardians, we literally do control the bank account, and so we are the lock on the bank account. It can't be accessed by anybody at the trust. So we are the people who are in control of that, and so we'll literally can see that on a daily basis. So it's not like we're going to be told how much is in the bank account. We have control of the bank account, and we're held to the strictest financial security that is possible to have. So that our bank allows. So that's very, very encouraging. And yeah, we're having daily, weekly chats about the progress in other areas.
Yeah, I want to go through a couple of things. There's been a couple of comments about the likes of donations and things like that. So we'll go through with this one, Alex. So there's Tony No Toppin says, building up a fund with money you can afford to lose, i.e. giving it to charity, is a good one. But I wonder what thought the trust has given to people being willing to part with more if it was refundable. So I think what he means by that one is, obviously, I've heard you mention this previously. I think you mentioned this on the launch night of this one, in regards to what was involved if it had been set up where you want to turn around and said, right, it hasn't worked, we're going to refund everyone the money back. Do you want to give people a little bit of an idea in regards to what happens in that sort of scenario?
Yeah, well, we thought that, there's a couple of things here. The first one is we did not want anyone to give us money they would not miss. That's key. And we haven't put minimum payments in. We haven't asked fans to give us anything beyond an amount of money, hopefully monthly through a repeat direct debit payment. But even if it's a one-off, that they'd miss. And this is for everyone. This isn't just for the super rich or the rich or people who've got thousands of pounds to give to this. This is for everybody. The trust is for everybody. It's why the first thing we did when we relaunched is reduce the membership fee to £1. I think the other thing is that you either have a fund or you don't. I think if we were to have £63,000 up there right now, but the opportunity or the possibility that 1,000 people might take out £20,000 of that. It's very difficult to make plans. It's very difficult to project. It's very difficult to work on if you're not quite sure what your fund is. And the third point would be a very boring one, is that administratively, it will be very, very difficult. It will be a lot of work, and there are fees attached to banking and large sums of money in business banking. And the trust is a business. It's a non-profit business. It's a business that exists for the benefit of its community. But we are subject to those fees like anyone else. So it would almost be a financial impossibility to do that. But I think the key point is that with the money going to charity, there is no bad destination for your money here. It is going to do good, in our opinion, no matter what happens. And that's an important message for us. Yeah,
no, you're right. What I was saying. Sticking on the donations, I will stay with you, Alex. Peter Arena says, would we consider growing the fund outside of fan donations, i.e. corporate donations or investing fund?
Corporate donations are more than welcome. People can pay through their business into the pledge scheme. It's open to everybody. So I'm more than happy for that. We wouldn't invest the money because we'll be very, very clear about the destination of the money and that it will be paid to charity or buy shares in Newcastle United. They're the only two things that can be spent on. Any investment, no matter how sound, always comes with a risk of loss. So it's just something would not be comfortable doing.
Yeah, and George, I'll come to you on that one. I would imagine that's a huge factor for you, obviously, being one of the faces behind controlling the money, as I would put it. Investing money that people have donated is something which is basically a line straight through that suggestion at any point.
Yeah, it goes into a bank account and it's there, and we know it's there, and I think that's really important. As Alex says, I'm sure it's an attractive idea. Here's some magic beans, please buy them for money, and so we just couldn't do that. You couldn't do that because you couldn't risk losing that. You couldn't risk losing that money, and so no, it's in the bank account, and that's where it stays safe and sound.
Perfect. Right, I want to get to my questions now that haven't been put in the comments. So I'll come straight out with these ones, Alex. Like I said at the very start of this, the last 24 hours on social media. Social media is a huge factor, whether that be good or bad at times. Personally, the likes of Twitter, Facebook, anyway, we get huge amounts of positivity from that one. But on the other hand, you get a lot of negativity on the back of that. Something which was saw, I think it was late last night, was a recent interview on Metro Radio where a trust member from the board got in a conversation about billionaire owners, which for me, it was hugely taken out of context. But do you just want to clear things up in regards to what was happening yesterday and obviously the accusations that were thrown towards the Newcastle United Supporters Trust?
Yeah, thank you. Linda Bush, who is one of our board members, very, very important board member. She was elected, I think, with nearly 3,500 votes in the election last year, which I know she was blown away by, and kind of tells you a little bit how far we've come in football. And at Newcastle, that she as a woman was delighted that the fans of Newcastle United had no issues at all. In fact, the two winners of the election were Charlotte and Linda, which tells you that sex, age, religion, ethnicity, at Newcastle United is irrelevant. We all only care about the same thing, which is the benefit of Newcastle United for its supporters. So that was really positive, and she does great work. She went on Metro Radio to talk about the ESL. We do a lot of media, as the trust, and it's just part of the job. Speaking to local outlets and national outlets or international outlets, and she basically said that she was sick of billionaire owners who didn't care about their football clubs and didn't care about their communities. Now, in my opinion, I don't want to speak for her too much, is very, very clearly talking about Mike Ashley, our current billionaire owner. I'm not quite sure what Mike Ashley's billions have done for Newcastle United. I'd say very little at all. And she's right. Linda is 100% right. I'm sick of billionaire owners, the likes of the top big six, who believe that this cultural institution of football in this country, this integral part of our societal fabric in this country, belongs to them because they're billionaires. It belongs to them. It is their game. It's not our game. It's their game, and they will decide where it's played, when it's played, who plays it, and who's invited. I find that grossly offensive, and I 100% agree with Linda that these kind of people and those kind of billionaires aren't welcome for me in English football. She was clearly not referring to anyone who wants to buy Newcastle United, and the suggestion of such is just wholly inaccurate and has been completely unfairly twisted to suit agendas which are not aligned to the pledge scheme of the trust. So she has my full support. She did nothing wrong, and I'm back her 100% in her words there. She is 100% correct that billionaires in football who don't engage with their football clubs or their communities aren't welcome.
Yeah.
I'm sort of, you'll have to forgive me a little bit, because I'm sort of, I haven't sort of kind of engaged in what sort of happened on Twitter or anything, because I try my best not to, not to get involved in sort of arguments like that. And albeit I love engaging on Twitter, but so I am sort of slightly confused, because obviously there was a massive schism in football last week in the Premier League involving the Big Six. I have heard the clip, by the way, this 36-second clip in which Linda Bush, who I don't know, but spoke for 20 seconds, I think. And I don't even think she talked about billionaire owners. I think that was the person doing the news segment. I think she talked about rich people who don't care about our communities and who don't see football clubs as community assets. I mean, as Alex said, we've got one of those. We've got one. We've got one now. That's the problem at Newcastle. We've got one of those people right now. And yeah, we saw the so-called Big Six do something appalling last week, and she was being asked about that, as far as I can tell. I've listened to it over and over again, and I'm struggling to understand what it is I should be offended about. As I say, it would be lovely if Newcastle had rich owners who saw the benefit of Newcastle as a community asset, and I truly hope that happens, and it must do. But let's maybe try and look on the positive side of when people who are volunteering their spare time. I don't think Linda Bush is on Twitter, as far as I know. She's not, unlike me, she's not looking for retweets or likes. She doesn't have an athletic subscription to sell. She's giving up her time to do something that she passionately believes in. And she said something which I agree with 100%. I'm sick of rich people owning football clubs and giving no thought to their fans. None. We've got one, and I don't want that to happen again.
Yeah, I think any fan, not just Newcastle United fan, but any football fan, will be in full agreement with the likes of the statements which were made. But obviously, when you take the statements completely out of context and try and throw a Newcastle United Saudi takeover in the mix of it, things, it's twisted. I'll end on that. It has been very, very twisted. And personally, I'm with you on this one, Alex. I fully back the statement which was behind that. Just as what George said, anybody with a wise head on the shoulders knew what happened over the last 24 hours on social media. Staying on social media, Alex, do you feel as if the trust are always fighting an uphill battle with certain people on social media? I think there's always people out to try and throw an elbow at the trust.
Well, from my perspective, I live in my own little echo chamber where everyone loves the trust and it's great and everyone likes it and dead nice to me.
You're wrong. Get out of that echo chamber.
So I don't, and I'm a bit like George. I don't actually see some of these things. They're kind of reported secondhand. And I think the first point is that the trust is open and transparent and exists for anyone. And criticism is absolutely fine. And like I said earlier, skepticism, criticism, I welcome it. I like it, and it's kind of a challenge to make sure that you get your message across as coherently as possible to try and reduce any skepticism. But you can't win every battle. I think social media and social media criticism is sadly, I'll label it abuse. Is sadly part of modern life, not just for the Newcastle United Supporters Trust or its board members. It's there for lots of people and lots of walks of life, and there are people who get it far worse than us. So I don't want to give people the impression that we believe we're some sort of embattled group. We get. I think the Trust's main launch video for the 892 pledge schemes had 500,000 views now, which is kind of humbling in terms of how far that's gone around the world. And everyone you see in that video is a volunteer, is an ordinary fan who was asked to do something extraordinary in their own spare time, and they did it. and the comments and the feedback has been magnificent. And so I view that as a massive positive for social media. Social media is crucial for our message, and we connect and engage with Newcastle United fans all over the world on a daily basis, and I'm grateful and humbled to be part of that in relation to the pledge scheme. In terms of people who don't like the trust, they exist. There are people who don't like lots of things in life, and that's absolutely fine. All of those people can contact me or any other board member any other time if they want a private conversation or concerns they have. We're open. There's no one I will not speak to about the Newcastle United Supporters Trust. It's my job as a volunteer board member or an elected board member who's a volunteer to try and further the reputation of the trust. And I will do that and have that conversation with anyone in the world, whether you're a member or not. If you are a member and you have concerns, then I'm even more keen to speak to you. But I think the last 24 hours, like you mentioned, stuff comes from certain groups or certain individuals. I bear them no ill will as people. I think they, like you say, take things out of context easily. Accusations of the trust being in bed with the Premier League just make me laugh, to be honest with you. The trust doesn't have a relationship with the Premier League. The trust has a relationship with the FSA, which has a formal engagement structure with the Premier League, which is really important, I think, in trying to get fan opinions on crucial things like VAR, for example. At the minute, it's a big one, which the Premier League are liaising with. The return of football fans in May for the fixture, the penultimate and last fixtures of the season, which, let's face it, I find it like exciting that in less than a month's time that looks like, all being well, there will be 10,000 people inside St James's Park. That for me is very important, that's done correctly and done with fan input, and the football club also, and I think they will, Newcastle United, engage with the trust and other fans on this. I'm going to concentrate on those things. They're the things that matter to me. Stuff on social media with fabricating stories, I appreciate the concern out there, but it's just not that important for what we're trying to do.
Yeah, no, you've summed that up really well, mate. I want to start wrapping this one up. Something which I want to mention, it was mentioned earlier, and obviously board representatives getting in front of people, like you said, the leader of the opposition, and obviously the Premier League. What was that last summer? The Premier League, in front of Richard Masters. A lot of things which have been thrown at you over the last few days is, do you want to protect your relationship with the Premier League as a supporters trust? And that's why you're not going out and basically saying, I don't want to say slating the Premier League and things like that in regards to the takeover decisions, because was there ever a decision made? But one of the things says that the reason you're not doing this is because you are trying to protect that relationship.
Yeah, but like I just said, Chris, we don't have a relationship with the Premier League. So the Football Supporters Association has the relationship with the Premier League, and we are one of like thousands of affiliate organisation members. Now, I believe, as the biggest supporters trust in the country in terms of active paying membership, that we should be in those conversations. I was publicly critical last week that Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, met with supporters trusts and we weren't invited. Whilst I'm aware that the world doesn't revolve around the Newcastle United Supporters Trust, I do think, as the biggest supporters trust in the country, we should have had a seat at that table. But I'm always going to say that because I'm always trying to further the reputation of the trust. This idea, like I've just said, that we are trying to protect some sort of relationship with the Premier League is simply false. It's not true. We don't have a relationship with the Premier League. We are lucky that it's always Thomas from our board, Thomas Concannon, who does a brilliant job. He sits on networking meetings, of which, by the way, we've never had a private meeting with the Premier League as a trust. There's always other clubs there from other trusts from other clubs. It's just nonsense. Last summer, Thomas, and I didn't plan to talk about him, he doesn't need me to big him up. Thomas had the responsibility in the middle of a working day in a pandemic of speaking to Richard Masters and Bill Bush with the weight and expectation of hundreds of thousands of people behind him. And he's an unpaid volunteer. And the work and effort that went into that from him, myself, Greg and others in a kind of mad 2-week period after George did his brilliant piece in The Athletic with Amanda Staveley after the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia publicly pulled the plug on the Premier League. We spoke to, well, first of all, we had to get 8,000 individuals to email their MPs. That wasn't an easy job overnight to do. There were sleepless nights. There was us doing our day jobs, getting on the phone to each other, working all night, being up till 2, 3, 4 a.m. and going again the next day pretty much for 2 weeks straight. We managed to get in front of Richard Masters in the Premier League, and we put the questions we thought that fans wanted answers from to Richard Masters, such as, did you keep the interests of Newcastle United Football Club at heart during the owners and directors process? Did you allow other football clubs, namely Liverpool and Spurs, to influence the owners and directors process? Can this never happen again to Newcastle United fans? Do you think it's fair this happened to Newcastle United fans? We put all of those to Richard Masters, and he gave us very clear, in my opinion, answers. Might not be answers people like I can't control, Thomas can't control what answers Richard Masters gives to questions. What we'll say is he was emphatic in his answers. They weren't half-arsed answers. He was emphatic. We were promised 10 to 15 minutes. Thomas got nearly 40 minutes out of them talking about the takeover process. And if there are people out there who want to denigrate the work that he did or try and throw accusations around about protections of relationships, I can't stop them. We can't stop them as a trust. We're just going to go back to doing the hard work, and it is hard work. And we'll have, like I said at the top of the show, we'll have a lot of help from a lot of brilliant people in trying to get the 1892 pledge scheme off the ground and make it a viable prospect for supporter ownership in the future. We're going to concentrate on that. We can't get too bogged down in nonsensical stuff. And it is nonsensical stuff. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way towards anyone. But the idea that the trust, to answer your question, Chris, has some sort of relationship to protect with the Premier League so it doesn't go in hard on the Premier League, it's just bollocks. I can't sum it any better than that.
Yeah, and Alex is makes a very kind of passionate and very fair case there. I mean, maybe in some ways, I'd like to answer this because I'm not part of the Supporters Trust Board. I'm an ordinary member, so I'm the same as absolutely everybody else. I mean, I'm a guardian of the pledge scheme, and I'm very proud to be that. But that doesn't allow me any special privileges within the trust, And the point is, it's your trust. It's a democratic organisation. You vote for the people that are doing all this stuff, and then they spend their free time trying their very best to represent you in all of these big things that have happened to us over this extraordinary kind of year and a bit. And if you feel strongly about it, then stand for election, be part of it, join the conversation. As I say, some people are happy to be members, and that's it, and that's okay. They might read their emails that come in very, very regularly, keeping us all informed of what's happening. But it's just ordinary people really trying their best to stick up for other fans and stick up for the best of their club. I'm one of those people, and as I say, I don't have any sort of interest in saying this, except that I believe it to the core of my being. That the stuff that ordinary Newcastle fans did, and that's what members of the trust are, did last summer around the takeover was extraordinary. And there were petitions, and they played a huge part as well. But again, to repeat, nobody else got in front of Richard Masters. It was ordinary Newcastle fans, effectively, who got in front of Richard Masters. That's extraordinary. That's extraordinary. Nobody else did it. Sky didn't do it. I didn't do it. Other people didn't do it. And we all tried. And so it's just ordinary fans giving up their time for no payment to try and do their best for the club. Be part of it if you want to be part of it. I'm sure they'd love to have you.
Yeah, I'll wrap this up, boys. I just want to say thanks for joining me. It's been great to hear, and you answer these questions. And like I said, there's some questions there which are quite hard hitting there. I just want to say thank you from myself and everybody else associated with the Gallowgateshots YouTube channel for being so open. Like we said at the very start of this, the Newcastle United Supporters Trust is transparent. You do lots of things like this, plenty. It's not just on YouTube, it's podcasts as well. It's interviews which Alex mentioned on radio, TV stations. The likes of people associated with the trust. What we have to remember at the end of the day, the volunteers, they're not getting paid for this. They're putting their time in. Think of it yourself, doing a full-time job, then everything which comes after the full-time job. Then obviously those people associated with the trust are doing even more than that. To get what they feel best for Newcastle United fans, and what we want as Newcastle fans, we all want the same thing at the end of the day there. So I just wanted to say thank you for the likes of you guys for being so heavily involved in this sort of thing.
Brilliant. Thanks for having us on, mate. It's a privilege to speak to you and anyone watching.
Yeah, loved it. I mean, it feels a bit strange we've not talked about the football at all when there's actually some quite positive things to talk about.
I know.
But there you go.
I know.
There you go.
I
Just
know. Right, boys. Thank you very much. I'm pretty confident if anybody does have more questions, just ask these lads. You all see them on social media. Just drop them a message. Just tag them in your questions, and I'm pretty confident if one of these two don't reply, then somebody else from the trust will jump in and answer your question. There's plenty of people involved. I know a few of them personally, and they're happy to answer questions. They really are. Don't hide behind anything and start throwing mud at them. Ask the question. They'll be honest with you. They always have been. They always will be. And I'll end it at that. Thank you very much, boys. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'll see you next time.